Here we go again on our own, going down
like
the only
drifter,
road.
we were born to walk alone.
Is that? I thought it was going down the only road we've ever known. Are those even the same song, or is it just different verses?
Yeah, it's different verses.
Okay.
Here we go again on my own.
Crushed it.
That's yeah. You sung the first verse. I was singing one of the later verses.
You can't just mix and match
I
like
always
that,
remember
Ryan.
that song because of a bad Will Ferrell movie that I liked. That not because of Will Ferrell. Well, I think it was the best Will Ferrell movie where, to me, it accentuated whatever. It was when I realized, not just Will Ferrell, but all of them, I realized that they were all doing the same thing over and over and over again. That movie was Old School. Did you ever see it?
Yes, I've seen Old School.
Vince Vaughn, Luke Perry. It literally had
Luke,
all of them.
Not Luke Perry, Luke Wilson.
Owen Wilson was in there too in cameo. Ben Stiller, I think, showed up at some point. Like it had all of them at some point. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And it was that movie that I realized. Oh, Sean William Scott's in that movie. He makes a weird cameo. It's like a horse. Yeah, remember? Will Ferrell eventually tanks himself with like a horse tranquilizer or whatever, and at like a circus or a birthday party, and Sean William Scott is the handler of the.
Yeah, you're my boy, Blue.
But Will Ferrell's antics in that movie are very Will Ferrell, and that was when I was just like, oh, this is Will Ferrell.
Ouch.
Whoa, bud.
Also, hey everybody, welcome back to Blood Brothers with Ryan and Kyle. We're here to talk about Will Ferrell movies. Ryan's favorite actor.
Not at all.
Not even a little bit. Ryan has a genuine hate for Will Ferrell.
It's not a hate. Hate's the wrong word.
Dislike. Strong dislike.
So, the thing is, I view guys like Will Ferrell the same way I view guys like Adam Sandler. There's nothing wrong with what they do, or Kevin Hart. They're people who are, or Mark Wahlberg. They are typecasted actors who are literally only good at one or two things and have no problem just milking that and just making money on that. They view films as money, not as creative works. And while I can respect them as people, when it comes to as like creative people, like when I can respect them as like entrepreneurs, you know what I mean, as businessmen.
Yeah.
I kind of felt this way the same way about like LMFAO. I don't view them as artists. They're not artists, because artists explore and change and grow. You know what I mean? Evolve.
Yeah.
Like these guys don't. And you know what? They don't pretend to either. They're not trying to tell you, come see my new comedy where I'm a completely different character. Like occasionally I find the actors challenge themselves. Like I felt like Will Ferrell has a couple movies. Same with Adam Sandler. I think each of them have examples where they're challenging their acting skills and pushing their limits. And I think those are some of their better movies. Like I liked Will Ferrell in the Lego Movie. I felt that was a nuanced, different version of Will Ferrell. It wasn't just Will Ferrell, you know what I mean? Like it was like a kind of a pseudo-childish dad who, you know, then he was also the villain where he got to ham it up, but he was also the real-life character. I thought that was but keep in mind, he's not the focal point of that movie at all, right? So
yeah.
I really liked also Reign Over Me, which was an Adam Sandler movie with Don Cheadle, where Adam Sandler played a post-9/11. His family was killed during 9/11, and so he just became like a recluse and a shut-in. Like that's like not a comedy at all. It's more of like a heartfelt movie. And like for me, I see these movies and I go, these guys could be. I see these things and I go, these guys could be Neil Patrick Harris. They could be insert comedic actor who has went on to prove that they aren't that, but they don't. You know what I mean? But then they decide to stop doing that, and then I'm just like, you're not as for me when you stop doing that. I want them to Neil Patrick Harris it, if you will, or I want them to Ryan Reynolds it. Yeah. I don't know if you remember.
Ryan Reynolds is a much better example.
Used to be that person as well. You know, he was in Waiting and Van Wilder. That's all he was. He was that one guy you played.
Just Friends.
Witty, sarcastic.
Handsome dude.
Handsome dude. Like Nathan Fillion has also played that role. Like.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, speaking of MPH, have you watched any of Lemony Snicket's?
We haven't started season 2 yet. So we are going to, but Alex and I have not. We're probably going to start watching that tonight.
Lemony Snicket's is fantastic, by the way. I was noticing something recently about it that I had not noticed before. And I can talk about this since it's not spoilery in any regard.
Sure.
Did you ever see the movie?
The Jim Carrey movie? No.
Yeah, I never did either. So I watched the trailer for the movie recently.
I think the movie took
like
the first 3 books, right? Like what will end up being
so
the first 3
movie's
seasons?
not like an anthology like this, where it's like each book is a season. It's kind of more, it's kind of a selected amount of events based on movie time. You know what I mean? I haven't seen it. I've only seen trailers, but from my understanding, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I've been
One
told.
of the things I was noticing immediately from watching the trailer, I didn't like Jim Carrey's performance at all. Like, I thought it was actively bad.
I think that's I think he's actually probably playing the role fine. I think that Count Olaf is supposed.
No,
I like the way the NPH
he's
does
not.
it better. No, you don't think so? Okay.
So from what I was gathering from the early part of his role, just from the trailers and stuff, all of his dialogue, like even lines that are similar or zany, like similar. So Jim Carrey's version of it is very dull, like muted. Like, so there's an aspect to NPH's version that I actually think gets underplayed, and it's the whole reason, in my opinion, the character. Count Olaf is awful. He's a loser. He's never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
But NPH plays it like he's Napoleon Dynamite. He plays it like Olaf thinks he's the hottest, coolest, funniest, best act. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But I'm not just talking about the character says those words. The way NPH plays it is like he plays it like Olaf believes it. Like, he believes Olaf is that cool. Like,
he's very good at playing a bad actor.
Charming, happy, upper. You know what I mean? His tone is very light.
Yeah.
Whereas Jim Carrey's, his tone was more dark and like Opie.
I think that was more the movie,
and that ruins
though.
the whole character, because I'm just like, he's not interesting at all now. He's a loser who's trying to convince you he isn't, but when he
doesn't believe it.
Speaks in that way, you don't believe that he believes. Like, he needs to be played, and part of it I think is that NPH is more musical in nature, so they're able to get away with the character being a little more
for sure.
zany. And I'm like, that works way better for the character, in my opinion. I think that makes the character.
I don't disagree with you. I haven't seen the movie either, but Alex did. She read like the books too. Like, she's a big fan of the series as a whole. I think from what she said, like, obviously not having seen it, is apparently the writing was overall worse, and Carrie's character suffered for it. Like, you know, there's times
I'm only
where
just saying, based on what I saw of the trailer and stuff, that's what my initial impression was like, oh, this actually looks weird. Like, tonally it seems like the one on Netflix is still a black comedy, but
but it's fun.
Like, it is, it's goofy.
Yeah,
and like this looked like it
I don't
might
know if
have
they stick with the
elements of
same.
that,
I don't know if they stick with the same
I just felt like some
opening,
characters were treating it a little too seriously.
Yeah, like, I don't know if they stick with the same opening sequence song, but like, it's literally like the first scene is just Neil Patrick Harris whimsically singing about how nobody should watch this show because it's going to depress you.
Well, and then, I mean, if you look at the whole tone of Lemony Snicket showing up, like breaking
like
the
the
fourth
Patrick
wall, which he does throughout the
Warburton
show.
character?
Yes, he plays Lemony Snicket, which is the writer.
No,
of the
but
books.
I wasn't sure if you. Well, apparently he actually, like, he is a character in the book as well. Like,
like, this is a whole thing. This is Lemony Snicket saying the events. Like, it's the writer saying, this is me saying the events that happened.
Yeah.
Like, narrating.
He put himself in as a character that is a narrator, recounting events that have happened in the quote unquote past or whatever. Yeah. I really wish I'd read those
he's
when I was a kid,
constantly like
right up my
he's
alley.
constantly making jokes and references and saying things that, like, you know, he often spoils the story. Like, it's one of those things, we were talking about this before, where it's more about the journey than it is, like, you know, we're talking more about the journey than the destination. Like with a Rock promo, the show's kind of delivered in that such a way where Lemony Snicket will show up and just be like, you would think that this has happened, but sadly that's not going to happen. So you're just like, okay, so the end result isn't actually, you know, the end result. It's like a sitcom almost. You know the end result, like It's Always Sunny. You know that they're all going to forget about it and it'll be a new hijinks the next episode. The fun is just the journey of how these characters continually go through these motions and acknowledge that. Yeah,
but I feel like they pace that really well. Like, it's not like he just like goes out and spoils shit like regardlessly. It's when the moments where he does it, what happens doesn't actually of the episode. Yeah, like what he tells you in advance doesn't actually affect the outcome, and in fact, knowing it actually in certain cases makes that better, right? Like, it's told very, very well. And then I feel like they just did a really good job with casting. Like, obviously, I'm still only talking about the first season, but like NPH was a fucking brilliant thing. Patrick Warburton is right up there, and I think that those kids are all very good too.
I mean. Can I say a spoiler?
I'd rather you didn't, if that's okay.
Can I say a spoiler that isn't a spoiler? Can I just tell you something? A character who's in it? A person who's in it? Your boy.
Nathan Fillion?
Who's in it? Yep.
Perfect.
He's in season 2.
Excellent.
He's a great character. You're going to love his character. I'm not going to say anything else about his character. I'm just going to say, look forward to Nathan Fillion.
Or should I look away, Ryan?
Yeah, you should look away.
Look away.
All right, we're grinding for blood vials.
Yeah.
While we rave about Lemony Snicket's. But yeah, season 2 was really actively one of my favorite shows.
It's very good.
Oh God.
What the fuck just happened there?
I'm gonna die. That's what happened.
Oh no, my God! That was like a WWE moment where you just got like dogpiled on and you just like slid out of the ring, and all these guys are just like wrecking each other, not realizing you're no longer in that pile. That was great.
I haven't been getting any blood vials either.
No, you've been having a bad time.
I should probably go to the big dudes.
Yeah, they give you them like consistently.
They usually give me two first.
Yeah, 2 each.
I feel like these gun guys usually give me bullets.
Well, yeah, of course. That makes sense though, right? Just fucking one-shot that dude. And that dude. I mean, I guess that's a video game trope, right? Ranged enemies have less health than melee enemies to compensate for being able to attack you from further away. Well, that's not the same thing as a glass cannon. Glass cannons are people who have no defenses. But they do lots of damage. Not really. They do less damage than the melee guys. It's just that they can
stun you. They can stun lock you though. If you're too far away and you try to walk a straight line at them, they will kill you.
But a glass cannon does a lot of damage in a very short amount of time, like instant.
I suppose.
Like a burst mage.
And they just gave me all bullets.
Yeah. Which you need, but we could use the vials more at this point.
Oh, the bell has tolled. When the bell tolls. Anyway, that's a Metallica song.
Yep.
Hey, have you heard of culture? American anyway. Enter Sam. I'm sorry.
You started like 3 different sentences there.
Because I realized how bad it was. I was just like, hey, have you heard of this song that everyone's heard of?
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'll just pretend that I'm cool. Hey, bud.
Well, as long as you're pretending.
Give me my health
swiping that
back.
corpse. Yeah.
Swipe or no swiping.
I'm sorry, Ryan, did you just make a Dora the Explorer reference?
Yeah, I had a niece. She's 18 this year. That's crazy, eh?
Yeah. Well, didn't Dora only come out, like, when she would have been older than that? No. Oh, no, I'm an idiot. I was like, yeah, I'm, like, 18, and then I remembered I'm 27. So never mind.
I'm 30
I was
this
like,
year.
yeah. No, I'm an idiot. Also, I know that we're still a little ways out on it. We should totally do another Drinks and Discussions on your birthday again, because that last one was fucking gold.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, we got one of the dankest memes that we've ever made. Mammal side of that one. I mean, I am a living meme, but...
Yeah.
Mammals, Ryan. We should totally do that.
I might be down. All right.
Yeah. We've only ever done 2 of those, too. Like, Shane and I had that other one that was...
Well, not really a Drinks and Discussions, was it? Were you drinking?
We were drinking. We didn't get drunk.
I couldn't recall if you guys were drinking.
We
It's not drunks and discussions.
Beers.
You don't have to get drunk. You can
drink.
We
drank. But yeah, that's kind of the thing was like, we just like sat down with a beer at the start. I think I refilled once. Shane had like a big one, so he didn't have to.
I hate when you guys do this. I hate when you guys are like, oh, we're going to be... Yeah, then I knew it would be you who
comes
first.
I thought you meant like me and Shane. I was like, what are you talking about? But okay, that makes more sense. Your choice of pronoun confused me for a moment. Okay.
Yeah, these guys should drop me blood vials. They usually... Oh, no, right. These guys drop shards.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. 3 blood vials.
3.
That's what I want to see.
That's what you need. That's what you love.
A number.
3 is the... I was going to say loneliest number, but that's 1.
Yeah, you can be lonely. I actually think the larger you get, the more that scale reverses. Because
what, loneliness of numbers?
Like, you know how it's like 1 is the loneliest number.
Yeah.
And then it says
2
the song goes 3 can be as bad as 1, but
or 2 can be as bad as 1,
or whatever.
So
the thing is I think legitimately, if you were to say 1 is the loneliest number, and then you progressively say you're less lonely, the numbers get higher. I think the more you get higher, the more that reverses. Like if you hit 1,000. You could easily be super lonely in a group of 1,000. Like, let's say you go to a sporting event, right?
Yeah, but it depends on it.
If you show up by yourself, you're in a group of large numbers. But if you're not talking to anyone and you're just like engaged, like you're just essentially sitting on your TV, except there, That's kind of the equivalent. Then that's just as lonely.
Yeah.
Actually, that's probably more lonely because it's contrasted by the fact that everyone around you isn't lonely. So that's like, you probably would leave. That's like people, like, you know how people sometimes go to restaurants by themselves? I've never understood that. I could never do that. When I'm traveling, and I hate it. Like, I will actually actively be like, if I'm like at an airport by myself, I will not eat in a food court. I will grab the food and go eat. You know what I mean? Go eat in a corner by myself. Because I'm just like, I don't want to be in this social area when I'm not being social. It just doesn't make sense.
I've had to get used to it because if I'm eating at work, I close a lot, so my shifts start later than everybody else's. So like 4:30, everyone else is working, and I don't start till 5. I'm usually just scarfing shit down, and obviously in the middle of a restaurant.
Is the store closed?
No.
But it just opened or something?
No, it's just between lunch and supper shifts.
I mean, you're working there, so that's kind of a different story. That's kind of forced.
Not really, I don't know. But because I've had to do it, so it doesn't really bother me. Like, I've also gone to the movies on my own before. Haven't really lately, because, you know, Alex, but before, if I didn't have a group of friends who wanted to go see a movie, or if people had already seen a movie, I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll just go see this movie.
I don't go to the movie theater alone. I never would, I don't think.
Yeah.
Either. That's another thing. Like, I don't know. It seems weird to me. Those seems like social. Like I guess the biggest qualm I have with it isn't like, hey, those seem like this is super social. You can't do it alone. It's more, why go somewhere to do it alone when I could just do the same thing? You know what I mean? At
popcorn's delicious, and those movies aren't out yet, Ryan. That's why.
I mean, I'll wait a week, however long it takes to get them.
Yeah, and popcorn's delicious.
Unless it's something I really want to see, but then in that case, I'm just looking for excuses to kind of invite someone to see them.
Yeah. Yeah, like fucking
Infinity
War.
Yeah. Light the fire.
Remember, don't go too far up there. We don't want to run into Father Gascoigne again. Lose all those souls.
There it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been somebody like... Yeah, like, there's people who will give you, like, weird looks sometimes occasionally, but I'm like, fuck them.
It's not like... It's not... I'm not worried about people giving me looks. It's more like, this is not... Why would I want to spend time alone in another person's place when I... Like, to me, sitting at home eating dinner is better by myself is better than going and eating dinner by myself somewhere else. It's better. Like, if I was in a situation where I didn't have anyone to go out to dinner, I would get it to go. Why would I sit there?
I would most of the time, too. Because I'd rather be doing something else.
Watch TV or whatever I want to do, right? Like, the thing is, you're so restricted on what you do when you have a meal at those places. Like, I've never been read a book in public either. Like, that's not me. It's like, I will read a book, sure, I'll read it at home. Why would I go in public? Like, you see people sometimes when you go to the Starbucks chapters mergers, like, you know, they have the two of them in the one building, and you'll just see people who don't buy books sitting in lanes just reading. And, like, the lanes will just be filled with people, and you're just like, what do you... like, maybe they're kids, maybe they don't have anywhere to go to read, I guess. I don't know, but just weird. I think it's weird. I think it's a weird behavior.
Well, I agree. Like, I wouldn't go out to eat in, like, the place that I live on my own, especially now, right?
Then again,
but you also mentioned, like, if you're traveling, like, it's the thing. Like, I'm not. The thing is, I wouldn't do it normally. It's mostly just because, like, I can, you know, I'm eating. I want to watch some Giant Bomb. I want to edit some episodes.
Yeah, right. Like, I could do whatever I want. Like,
but if you're traveling, you can't. So, like, I'm already can't.
If you're traveling, but at that point, I understand it. I mentioned that when you're traveling, I get it.
Yeah, but you said that you hate
been
doing
in that position.
I think, didn't you? I thought you.
No, I said that I will. What I will do is do it differently. Like, I won't eat in the food court. I'll go get fast food and go sit in the terminal in a corner by myself. Okay. And bring up my tablet or something. Like, if I'm not going to if I'm not going to be social, then I will be in a private space. Like, there are private spaces even when you're traveling. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like some people, and I get it. Like, that's part of it. The part of it could be just me. Like, I'm more. I'm not a very overtly social person. So, to me, those social areas are not good hubs to spend to spend personal time. Yeah. That just seems silly to me. Oh, we don't need to kill the pig. What am I doing?
No, get the fuck out of there.
We don't really have enough blood vials, do we? I feel like we've been getting a little cheaped out on blood vials.
Well, you've had to use it.
But I don't know. That's just my quote unquote hot take on it. Is just like, keep in mind, I would never go to the beach even with friends. So, or the fair. Like, even with friends. You would have to. It would have to be like, Ryan, we'll do this for you if you come to this. Like, that has to be the type of situation. Otherwise, I'm like, why would I waste time going to the fair? I don't know. Like, I just don't understand people's obsession with bad experiences. And like you could tell me, oh well, the beach isn't a bad experience, and I would say, and you could just say, well, that's just a matter of opinion. But I'm not actually talking about the type of experiences that most people would consider good. I'm talking about universally, everyone I've ever talked to has bad experiences doing these social activities, yet they continue to do them because it's considered like I will negate these bad experiences because of the good experiences they have. So the bad experiences are things I'm talking about, like lines and having to deal with suntan lotion and buying accessories and getting free time and worrying about the weather and worrying about a good spot to sit. Like, people, all of these are nuisances for universally everybody. But when you go to the fair, you got to find out where to park and where to go, and you got to make sure you have bug screen, and you got to make sure you get to the lines in time, and you got to deal with nobody wants to deal with these things, yet they choose to because well, this is a social thing. Because I get nothing from the social thing. To me, that's all just a bad time. It's just like, why would you want to? Why a line? Why not just? It's like order what you need online. It's like Black Friday. Why would I go shopping Black Friday? Especially when those deals are available, like.
Well, and that's a bad time because everyone's trying to kill each other.
Like Toys R Us is going out of business, as you know, and like a lot of people are going there and like just like, oh, it says sale, and it's like people went there and like compared with like Amazon, and it's like this is literally comparable to Amazon prices. So what they did is they marked their prices back up and then put them back on sale or whatever. It's just like. This is just bullshit. They're like, this isn't really a sale, but people are just like, it's a sale, you got to do it. Like, I don't know.
Well, people are idiots, Ryan.
Like, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. It's like you get so caught up in the idea that you're getting a good experience that you negate all the things that make it not a good experience, and it's just like, I don't feel that's a fair review of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Like, obviously, it's a reward management thing. Like, if you really enjoy those highs, then it's usually worth putting up with those lows, right? Like, I really enjoy what we do.
Wow, what the hell? Since when did you 20 attacks at once, bud? Jesus, that came out of nowhere.
It's been less lately because you just like wreck him so fast that he doesn't have time to.
No, but then I don't gain any blood vials.
Yeah, it was a net neutral.
I don't expect him to do that. I'm just like,
but you got because
I can't stun lock them as much. But man, he just decided to go door.
Yeah, but there's definitely been like times when we've been recording where like when things aren't working properly and like that's a giant fucking hassle. But that's rewarded by the by the times when we're having a good time doing it. Which I would say that there's definitely more highs than lows, and I probably get stuck with more lows than anybody else because when there's a technical issue happening, I have to fix it. And if there's an issue, sometimes I've had issues like on the back end with editing where like things aren't working the way they're supposed to, and something that should take me 10 minutes to edit takes me like 45, and it's like a giant hassle. But there's also something very satisfying about putting out a good product, and as long as those highs are worth it. Like if I didn't enjoy recording, then I probably wouldn't do this.
Well, no, of course. I'm not saying that those people those highs don't exist. Yeah. That's not my argument. Isn't necessarily
right.
That
you're saying that those highs aren't high enough for you to justify the lows.
Not only that, I earnestly don't think the highs are high enough for these people. But the only reason that they continue with the experience, I think the negatives overwhelm the highs even for them. But because people are too lazy to come up with another version of this is how markets work, right? Before, people used to stand in line in the cold for games like Bloodborne midnight releases because it was the only way you could get it. Are they still doing that? Is that the only way to get that high now? Why? Because someone somewhere said that this is stupid. Why are we going through all this bullshit to get the high we want? You shouldn't have to do that. But I'm saying
I think that was more of a case of technology.
It's not necessarily always technology. It's someone rethinking things with just current standards. That's not always technology.
Sure.
Like a lot of people are under the impression that you need to invent something to fix it, and not realizing that you need to take what exists already and then apply it to the current world, and then you're not going to invent anything new. You will simply realize that there are solutions to these problems, and if you stop just going, well, this is how it is, you have to go through bad lines to deal with the beach crowd, that's just how it works. I don't fundamentally believe that's accurate. I believe if you were to give me $1 million, I would develop a beach type experience that would cater to businesses with no lines, that would enable.
I've never had to deal with
the technology is there. That stuff's
beach.
there, but people are just so. I think it's ignorance. I think it's ignorance to the fact that the situation could be better, that they don't care how bad it is. Their highs are their highs, and to me, that's dangerous. I don't like that. I think that's a dangerous opinion.
Yeah,
like,
so I don't
to
think
me,
you and I have some.
and the only way you're supposed to in
a
consumer market, right? In a consumer market, the only way you're supposed to show that the negatives are like you to show that it doesn't matter what the highs are. I don't agree with this. This is too negative. There's a better way to do this. The only way you're supposed to show that is with your dollar, right? So I don't go to beaches. But too many people by a large enough. This is a modern problem in games, Kyle. I would argue universally, most people agree that there's a better way to do microtransactions than the way most people do them. But people still do them badly. Why? Because there's enough ignorant people who consume it that it doesn't matter what the consumer says.
Sure.
Until that changes, right? So then it becomes our job not to change the system by arguing and voting with our dollar. It becomes then making points that I'm making right now. Stop being ignorant to this. If there is enough negatives to this, you need to voice that these are negatives, because there actually might be a solution to that. As a consumer, anything that is a bad part of an experience you're engaging in. So let's say you go to the beach all the time. If you think X and X and X are bad, say that every single year. When that's not changing, start to think if there are ways it should or could have been changing.
So I'm gonna back up to 2 points here. One, I'm pretty sure that is what happened with games.
I went on a tangent there.
It's
starting to happen, yeah.
Yeah,
but I'm only pointing out how that was a gradual evolution as the focus stopped being on shaming the companies doing it and started being on educating people. Stop just accepting this. You cannot. Otherwise, it won't change.
But you understand that in the States specifically, for a long amount of time, it was better to go wait in line in the cold, because when internets had data caps there, I'm not fucking downloading a 60 gig game. And it could take
absolutely.
And if your internet was bad enough, that was not worth it when they got rid of those. That now it's something that's when I'm saying the technology became available. The downsides were bigger there. So I think the games developed. It's kind of an argument that that is what people did. They were like, this is bullshit. They dealt with the ISPs to an extent. It's obviously way better here than it is in the States. It's fucking dumpster fire.
Well, yeah, and it's getting worse in the States now because ISPs are going to start charging for dumb shit.
Yeah, they're going to do David caps again because the fucking net neutrality laws.
And here's the thing: working with a web development company, I kind of see this firsthand.
Yeah,
regular consumers. Ignorance is not considered something that businesses would rather you be ignorant, because then they can take advantage of you. Then they can trick you. Then they can mislead information.
It's way easier to make money off of dumb people.
And from my perspective, that's when I look at the beach, I look at that happening. I think it's.
Where are you seeing lines at the beach,
I'll give you a perfect example, right? I'll give you a perfect example. When in Sylvan Lake, I don't know if do you know what Sylvan Lake is? It's an area here in Alberta.
Yes.
So Sylvan Lake is it's a population maybe like 50,000. It's not super large, but it started to scale up and get bigger. But it's a travel destination for a lot of people during the summer, because there's not a lot of summertime here in Canada, especially in Alberta. So during the 2 months of the summer, you get lots of tourists, not just from here, from the States, everywhere, right? Because it's the only, for whatever reason, people have heard of Sylvan Lake. So when the tourist time happens, when I lived there, pretty much everyone who lived there universally agreed, I'm not going there. I'm not going to go to the downtown area, because it's just the beachfront is now granted, over the years the beachfront's also decayed, the quality of it. I mean, the actual beach, because it's just a lake, right? It's not the ocean front. So
I feel like we've had very different beach experiences, because when you're talking about these lines, I don't have these issues. You just go.
I'm not talking about lines to get to. I don't care about the beach. I'm not talking about lines to get to the beach. I'm talking about unless it's traffic lines, which everyone has to do. America's a perfect example for this. You know what I mean? The amount of people who who travel, the amount of people who drive cars in New York, but tell themselves they don't want to do that experience is high. It's very high, and you see that represented in every American New York sitcom. All the characters are like, "Why are we driving? We're just sitting in traffic." Yet they're like, "Well, I don't know. There's nothing better to do." It's just but
they're the subway.
They've actively been dealing with this problem of congestion for years, but they're just they remain ignorant to it, because it's just I don't know. It's not my problem. It's just not big enough on their checkbox. You know what I mean?
Isn't the subway system really good in New York? It's pretty easy to get everywhere.
No, generally not. It's also pretty bad.
I thought it was really bad in San Francisco.
There's still millions of people who drive cars. There's still millions of people who drive cars in New York.
Yeah, because people are idiots. But if you're a smart person, I'm pretty sure you can...
That's really realistically the point I'm getting. But the specific example I always like to use with lines was there was a subway. So there's a small subway in downtown.
Are you talking about the restaurant or the transportation mode?
The fast food chain.
Okay, gotcha.
Previously, we were talking about the subway stations.
Sure. Yeah. I wanted to make sure we were on the same
New York
page.
now,
Yeah. You're talking about Subway,
example.
Eat Fresh, definitely not really fresh.
So it's right on the downtown strip or whatever of Sylvan Lake. So, I'm trying to remember where to go now that we've cleared out all the air. I guess we're gonna go back to the cathedral, eh?
Probably.
Anyway, this subway is not really large, right? So it can't accommodate a lot of people indoors, right? So you'll see a group of people line up there during tourist season, like during regular time of the year. That subway's like, you could pretty much, unless it's dinner time, right? Unless it's dinner time or lunchtime, in which case it's like, oh, people are choosing to eat at this time, probably out of forced conditions, right? Generally, from my experience, lunch rushes aren't due to people being ignorant. It's more due to I have an hour off.
I have an hour off of work. This is when I have to go. Yeah.
This time.
This is obviously something I'm pretty privy to.
That's something where I'm just like, that's not really as a result of ignorance. But during the tourist time, there's lines out the subway whenever you're at the beach, like literally like out the door, and that would never change from sun up till sundown. And I just sit there and I go, why does anyone choose to get in that line? I'm just like, and I'm also just like, why also doesn't Subway like change their business method during the summer? You know what I mean? They know that they're going to actively get this tourists, so why don't they like, you know, build an outdoor thing for the line, or find a way to hire more servers, or like there's just a million things that go through my brain where I'm just like, this is so suboptimal and nobody gives a shit. I hate that.
Suboptimal?
Suboptimal. You're damn right.
No, because I like that because you were like suboptimal for Subway.
Yeah, but it is. But it's also a suboptimal experience. You know what I mean? Like it 100% is not optimal to any capacity. It's hashtag shitty experience. Everyone involved in it doesn't like it. Like that's the thing too, right? The people who get in line, like that's kind of what I'm talking about. None of them want to wait in line. Nobody is like, hey, can you give me? If you gave them their sub faster, they would not be they would be more satisfied. Period. That is an actual statement, right? Unless you're fucking crazy.
That happens at the restaurant sometimes. I've had the occasional person bitch
that their food's too
fast, and I'm like, fuck you. Like I don't care that you're upset about this. You're wrong. Like objectively, you're wrong. Like the only time that I delay food coming out is when they're doing multiple courses, and then I'm reasonable with it.
When you see it be the same people year after, like that's where this starts to, that's where I start to look at this as like this weird ignorance.
Yeah, people are fucking dumb.
It's like whatever, fine. You stood in line at the subway one summer, extra time because that's just you happen to be at the beach.
You didn't learn.
But if you're the type of person who goes to that beach for 2 months every year, I then and line up at that subway 3 times a week to do that, I start to go, you're part of the reason that this subway never changes.
Yeah,
you need to start letting them know that they can't. This isn't fucking acceptable because you're doing this every year, every summer, multiple times a week. Like, you're a repeat ignorant consumer, and then you also are the type of consumer that generally most of these consumers also believe they have a right to complain about it, right? You get in line with them like, oh fuck, Subway, this Subway fucking sucks. That's like the first thing out of their mouth, and I'm just like, actually, you suck. You're the person who sucks here, because if you all stopped coming to the Subway and went to a place that figured its shit out to handle more customers during summer, Subway would lose enough business that they would be like, shit, we should probably do an outdoor thing so we can handle more customers. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
A less overall ignorant consumer creates a better overall consumer environment. And you want to be that consumer yourself, but then if not enough people are that consumer, it's kind of like with politics.
Yeah,
where
your vote doesn't matter as much.
Even if like what happened in this case with the federal government. Even though I voted liberally, the riding where I was won by a conservative, but the liberal federal government won. So despite the fact that they say every vote matters, in that actual instance, my vote was absolutely 100% irrelevant. It did nothing.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like the same. It constantly makes me feel like this is just an example of the system not working. I'm just like, because it's called some people use it to Walmart or McDonald's or like certain flight what are the name of the companies? Air companies. What are they called? They have a name.
Airbnb?
Airline companies.
Or airlines. Okay, sorry, I wasn't.
Yeah, airlines. They become too big to fail because the market share is so large that they'll always be scooping up just enough ignorant people that they don't actually have to change their consumer practices. And it's just like, that's where I totally understand like social movements to change consumer practices, because I'm like, they're trying to educate the ignorant people because there's really no other way to fight this. Like, you can't just vote with your dollar because voting with your dollar isn't accomplishing anything.
No,
and
but
sometimes that happens in games, and sometimes I think that education thing. I think games is actually the best example of this stuff actually changing because enough people got their ears to the grindstone that they're not letting their ignorant friends get a bypass. You know what I mean?
Not just that, but I think that games is actually a really good example of people who are smart about this, right? Voting with your dollars matters more in games because, who is the market for Subway? It's fucking everybody. Everybody needs
anybody
to eat.
who craves a sub, and
anybody who needs
a lot
to
of times they're going
has to consider that as an option.
We sit there and think repeat users, but the type of casuals that go into those restaurants that know very little, or they know what Subway is. They've been there 2 or 3 times in their life.
Yeah.
They happen to be traveling through town. They're hungry and they're in the mood for a sub. They are least likely to want to consume any outside information about Subway, about their business practices, about anything like that.
Not even just that, but everybody needs to eat. So it is possible for Subway to get anyone to walk into that building. If you're a AAA game developer, who are you making games for?
A subset of audience.
Yes.
The
games
type
are
of
still a
AAA
niche thing.
the type of game developers that get away with this stuff are usually AAA in nature because they've reached a level of exposure where there are casuals who are picking their products up like what you're talking about.
But it's obviously a much smaller subset of people, right? And you can break things down into 2 different groups, right? There's like the gaming enthusiasts, yourself and me, and then there's casuals who are gonna, there are certain cases where they'll just buy shit, with a less informed decision. However, the casual, you and I will, either go through our own experiences with researching a game, or we will go through trusted sources like a Giant Bomb, like a GameSpot, like an IGN to a certain extent.
Yeah,
right?
we don't count though because I would argue we're a little more connected than the average. I guess we do count, but what I mean to say is we are in a group of people who is a subset of that subset who's like
But I think that
most people who have their ear to the grindstone a little bit don't actively follow sites like every day.
No, but they'll look up a review or whatever,
E3
right?
is generally a byproduct of people who are just like, I want to pay attention a little bit to the industry, so I'll watch that every year type of thing.
Yeah, but I don't think this detracts from my point. Like it.
No.
There are the people who we're definitely more. We're definitely more into that. Like we're checking shit out on the regular, but. If somebody's thinking, like, somebody who's in our same, somebody I would call a gaming enthusiast, but is not watching Giant Bomb videos every week or, like, looking up every GameSpot review, if they're like, I think I want to buy this game, rather than just going and looking up a trailer, they're probably going to go and check out a review, even if they don't do that regularly, right?
Maybe.
A casual is either going to go buy something based off its name, or they're not going to look up a review.
See an advertisement on TV and go, that looks dope, I'm going to pick it up.
Or they're going to ask their friends who are enthusiasts for opinions.
Yes.
So
or they'll be like, hey, I'm interested in this game I saw footage for. Is it dope?
Developers...
The enthusiast then has to be like, I have to remember what this casual's tastes are like because he might totally be okay with Call of Duty the 7th.
Right,
you know what I mean?
But if they're like, oh man, the Mass Effect games are supposed to be really good, right? I should go pick up Andromeda. Fucking don't pick up Andromeda. They totally botched it. Oh, okay. Like,
but that's not the case either. Because if you're coming at it from, so if you're a casual, at least I wouldn't think that's the case. I wouldn't give that recommendation. I would actually, to me, the recommendation has to 100% be based on what they play. So if they've never played Mass Effect, if they've never played Mass Effect before and their favorite game is, I don't know, pick a franchise that is like, I'm trying to think of a good example franchise, and their favorite game is Skyrim, they would probably be okay playing Mass Effect Andromeda, yeah.
So
the thing is, the things that fuck up,
I was thinking people who
the things that fuck up Mass Effect Andromeda as a recommendation to anyone,
or people who like Mass Effect
at launch, were bugs. Those are gone now. So it really comes down to, is the writing in this worth your time? If you're a fan of the series and you're a fan of deep level RPGs, absolutely not. If you're a casual, probably it could be. So
see, somebody who's completely under the series, I would recommend starting with another Mass Effect. Either one, if I think they could get through it, or starting with 2.
What if they're a casual and their hookup is, I don't want to play games that have outdated controls or graphics? Then none of the old Mass Effects are for. Then literally, that's what Mass Effect Andromeda. That's the thing, right? As much as we belittle these games, they are going for target audiences.
We're getting a little bit away from.
Only want to try new shit and don't like playing old shit.
Sure,
and
but we're also
care about. I'm not going to say quality, but I mean more. They don't care about quality on a scale. They care.
We're getting a little bit.
Is this the newest, coolest? Sure. Does it have the best mechanics or the newest mechanics? Undoubtedly, Andromeda as a video game plays better than all the other Mass Effects. That was an undoubtedly true.
Oh
Even
yeah,
for people who shit talk the game.
Minus the bugs, obviously,
combat
right?
was better than all of the combat in the previous Mass Effect games.
Yeah, minus the bugs, obviously.
But now that's gone.
My overall,
right? They've had a year since they patched.
I'll take your word for it. I stopped paying attention. So I was like, fucking
I
nope.
haven't played it. I'm only talking from people I've talked to in GB
chat.
Right, I've seen people on forums go, "What's your favorite game in a franchise? Come fight you, even though you know it's bad." And Mass Effect Andromeda Andromeda's one I see a lot. Everyone's like, dude, the jump hack and the combat encounters, like, yeah, the writing's more Josh Whedon satire bullshit, but it's like, part of the reason some people don't like that Josh Whedon satire bullshit is because it's played out.
Yeah. So I just want to get back to my overall point that I was making. No, that's okay.
We didn't need to go into a Mass Effect Andromeda tangent, especially not neither of us have bought or own the game. It's just
or have any interest in playing.
I'm only saying that it's a scale for what you would recommend based on what they're interested in. What
Right, but the overall point I was making is that game developers are more beholden to game enthusiasts than most marketplaces are, because your enthusiasts will paint that brush. Yeah, you can you'll be able to get away with certain things, right? Call of Duties can get away with the Call of Duty name, whereas the enthusiasts have all dropped off the case for another couple of years. But eventually, the developers have to start developing games that the enthusiasts want to play, because they are still, gaming as a whole is still relatively niche compared to something like food or purchasing of electronics in general, or a lot of businesses.
They essentially, I think that the real a more accurate way to word it would be that as long as you're developing for a subset that is large enough that it's like a group of fans and you're paying attention to what they want. Because keep in mind that the casuals we're talking about, so let's say we talk about a casual picks up Mass Effect Andromeda for the first time and really likes it, right? Let's assume they're going to develop a sequel to that game. So that person no longer counts as a casual for any future Mass Effect sequels.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? They're now an enthusiast as a Mass Effect franchise because they're interested in it. So their perceptions on it, because even though they're a casual, they still want the series to evolve, right? It's very unlikely that they're just like, fuck it, don't do anything with this sequel. Don't change it at all, right? I think games are very unique in that you have to change them all the time, and when you're developing sequels, you're literally trying to sell people on more of the same thing.
This is a better experience than the last one.
Yeah, you have to put just enough new things in there, or different things, or things to satisfy a subset of people. And it's okay to piss off enthusiasts if what you're doing. I think a good example of a game that piss off gaming enthusiasts, but has created its own subset of enthusiasts would be sports games. Because there are people who, like Jeff and them, who liked sports games when they were funner, arcadier. But so you're gaming enthusiasts whose sports games are really relatively no longer for them anymore. They've developed a subset of non-arcadey people who like the sports games for what they are, people that I think that those people are like, you're still then paying attention to them, right? Because
they're paying attention. They have built a core audience, but that's the thing.
Is if they try to fan base at that point, right? They're literally the people who are your core audience at that point.
No, but I mean, that's what I mean. Like,
it's just a really nuanced conversation, but I do think that a lot of content actually is going this way. I think TV, movies, I think it all is headed this direction, where you're basically tiering your consumers based on how they consume your content and how likely it is that they're to recommend it to others. And I think, to your point, there are some tiers of your consumer base that you absolutely have to listen to, because they're the ones that are the most important or the most influential.
Yes, influential obviously matters more, because obviously everybody's dollar matters the exact same. A random casual who has never played a game before going out and buying a copy of Yakuza 6 matters just as much as a guy who's been around since the start of the series on a dollar perspective. But who's more likely to buy Yakuza 7? The guy who
influential doesn't always mean opinion. It just depends on influential. Could be
and obviously if you have an audience,
the point is that you're listening
matters
to
much
what
more.
They're saying, so that you're at least keeping a subset happy, so that you have an audience.
Yes, and obviously there are certain things that influential can mean opinion, but if you have an audience, it obviously matters much more.
But I honestly also think that this stuff is not just extending to content. Not just I think this stuff is going to, as the world becomes more, and I do think there's examples of the world going this way with consumer markets. I think the consumer markets will inevitably go this way as well, where you're going to start eventually over the years. This is going to be a really probably controversial statement. You might not agree with me here. Okay. Eventually, McDonald's will no longer attract casuals. Eventually, they will stop attracting people who are just like, I'm hungry, I'm going to go to McDonald's. Because there will be enough alternatives, and the exposure of the fact that McDonald's isn't good for you will reach enough of a market that McDonald's will now turn into WWE. They need to start marketing the people who enjoy McDonald's, and they need to keep them happy. Because if they don't, they will lose consumer fan bases to the point that they lose money.
So
I don't think that's a decade or 5 years. I think
it's dependent on
oversaturation of anything leads to that. That's just how that works.
So
and
I think that
after
it's out of
McDonald's has been in the
McDonald's
culture
hands.
for 100, 200 years, you can't tell me there's not consequences to that. Especially if they don't change their menu. Especially if they're still as unhealthy now as they always have been. There will eventually be more people who turn into you, who go, I've eaten McDonald's for 40 years. You know what? I'm going to switch it up. I'm sick of this.
I would say
what I
that
mean?
it would be more so like it's going to happen not out of anything that McDonald's does. It's going to be when the competition gets good enough that people. There are certain things that people will put up with McDonald's right now because it's fast and it's cheap, right?
Oh
more so
if you
than
can
something
get
else.
if you can get something just as if you can get steak, if you can get filet mignon $50 meal cheaper and as fast, exactly right. But those evolving and changing consumer markets are bound to happen just with time. That's just how it works.
Yeah. Yes. So just real quick to finish what I was saying with the games thing. Yeah.
I'm gonna
I think that
attack here.
No, of course. Is that I think that the games like the main reason that we see games changing as or change faster in those things, right, is because the enthusiasts have a loud enough voice that they can, especially in the age of social media, the enthusiasts have a loud enough voice that they can completely sink a ship, right? EA thought they were going to be able to get away with Battlefront 2, but they pissed off the games fans and the Star Wars fans enough with the loot system, and obviously the journalists fall into that same category as well, right? Where it's like, this game is a fucking tragedy. Don't buy it, because you're going to get fucked. You're going to have a bad experience.
But you do realize that Star Wars Battlefront 2 sold a lot, right? It sold less than Battlefront Run, but it sold over 10 million units.
Right, it did. But they didn't get. They weren't going to be able to make enough money off of just original game sales. I think, right? Like they were like. They pissed off people enough that they were
microtransactions are back in that game. If you have not heard,
of course
also,
they're back.
They fixed everything. But they fixed it all. Like it finally has a competent microtransaction system where there's no loot boxes. Like there's I believe we've talked about this, but the only loot box in it now is like a daily login, and you can never purchase it. And the only thing you can buy is the paid currency, and you can earn the paid currency for free by just playing.
Yes.
So it's just like, okay, so it's harsh. It's what everyone is, and all the the only thing
League
you
of
can
Legends,
get in it now
Dota,
are cosmetics. Like it's literally
model.
they for whatever
Overwatch
reason they didn't want to do that to begin with. I don't know.
They're fucking dumb. But they fucked. I think we can agree they fucked up pretty bad. They got to the point where the fucking U.S. government was going to get involved. With like, hey, you're actually making kids gamble at this point.
Yeah.
Like they fucked up
also,
bad enough.
Apparently, single player game Shadow of War just recently we were just to talk about this removed its microtransactions completely. Because it's a single-player game. Like, everyone at the time was like, this doesn't need microtransactions. Why are they in here?
Yeah.
And it was considered, like, a big deal. And, so there's another example. We're just talking about how instead of focusing on the business that's operating the bad business practices, these people are now focusing on the ignorant consumers who are still consuming, and like not focusing on them as like villains, just trying to educate them by spreading the message. And like now people are changing. Like obviously we're saying how this is happening more in games, but I do think that'll start to happen more everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
like,
I agree.
My line example will happen too. Once people can get a Subway equivalent food without having to wait in line, even when it's busy, suddenly Subway will have to be like, shit, we got to change. Right?
This chain's finished.
The only way to influence that isn't just to have someone create that good idea. It's to have people overexpose that good idea and raise awareness for why it's bad. Right?
Yeah. I just think that something like food is going to take longer. Because
it just sucks that these things are slow in nature to change.
Right, but and the lower the barrier to entry is, the longer it takes. Right? Games go faster with this because there are people who are too dumb to understand and play games. Those people will never, like, you don't have to worry about them spending their money and then, AAA developers being like, oh, we're still getting enough money out of this, we can keep doing this bullshit. Food, everybody has to eat. Dumb people know how to stand in the line. So they're still gonna, like, you could still, even if, like, every intelligent person's like, we're never gonna eat McDonald's again, there's enough dumb people that are gonna be like, well, it's right here and it's fast, that they could probably still, like, you could probably still finance a restaurant.
Right? The thing is they no one's necessarily saying that they'll go out of business. Like, the one thing I like to, you remember how we've talked about this before, the everything is wrestling theory?
Yeah.
The reason I like to use this is because wrestling is a perfect example of doing everything wrong and still not going out of business.
Yeah.
And, like, I always like to go, there's lots, wrestling's one of the first things that, like, not first, but wrestling's existed for a very long time as a high exposed, but not high, like, artsy, but, like, it's been exposed to a large population of people. Most people in the world know who Hulk Hogan is and have known that since 1980. You know what I mean? Like,
I haven't known that since 1980.
You weren't born in 1980.
That is
but
why.
You eventually learned who Hulk Hogan was because someone told you. Why did
I
someone
knew
tell
who Hulk
you?
Hogan was long before I was a wrestling
enthusiast. Because everyone knew who Hulk Hogan was. Wrestling blew up when Hulk Hogan blew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In America, it did, and then and then it became a byproduct of this is American culture, and then American culture blew up, right? So by extension, everything is. When I say everything is wrestling, I'm mostly just meaning history of things lasting a long time, but succeeding to do it in spite of themselves. And how odd that is. Wrestling constantly rid the line of what was considered in, even though that's a dangerous thing to do because it doesn't take long for the extreme version of what's considered in to be out. You know what I mean? Those only have a year or two sometimes culturally before people have moved on, or people are like, shit, why was that in? That's the most ridiculous thing of all time, right? Like,
dabbing.
A year or two is probably short, but nowadays maybe it's a year or two. But back in the day, maybe it was 5 years or whatever have you, right?
Yeah, sure.
An example of this would be, the WWE used to do bra and panties matches because it was really extreme and catered to an audience, and women tolerated it. It wasn't considered awful, right? Whereas in hindsight, they couldn't get away with doing that now, right?
Well, not now because
the
amount of people who are still into it are not going to outweigh the negative voices of the people who would be outraged.
Exactly. Now, it is no longer an in thing, right? That's the thing. Even though being on the edge of, like, PG was in at the time because everyone was like, I want to see violence. The movie theaters were loaded with it. People were tolerant of it, and now people have chosen to be less tolerant of it. Or people are like, if you're going to do this, it has to be clearly labeled, right? Like John Wick is clearly rated R. You know what I mean?
You know what you're getting when you go into that movie. You do not want to go up that staircase, by the way. Father's up there.
I know.
Okay.
But I think we've killed all the enemies in the level.
Maybe. But yeah, also I think that because of like the thing with the internet, like nowadays, the people who would have put up with this stuff before aren't going to now. I'm somebody who
not necessarily that you need to change every time someone
I think this
gets all uppity either, right?
No, I'm not talking about that.
It just depends.
That's not the point I'm making. People who would have put up with this 15 years ago won't now. Me, for example, I'm a pretty sexually charged person. I like girls. I like girls a lot. I would have been totally fine watching.
Charged, you should say.
Yes. No, but I mean, like, my sexuality is a pretty big part of who I am as a person. Like, I make a lot of jokes, I make a lot of comments. I don't do it as much here because I like to be a little bit more high-minded, but and I don't do it as much with you because that's not really something that we share as people. That's not really something you're so much into, so I don't get a lot of value out of a conversation like that with you. But I would have in the early 2000s been like totally down to watch a bra and panties match because that would have been the place to see that stuff. Nowadays, there are other avenues. It's very easy to scratch that itch for myself, metaphorically. I don't want that in wrestling. If I want to, like, there's still a certain amount of, like, sexual attraction there. Like, a hot lady is a hot lady no matter what. If she's also a good wrestler, great. But the hot lady part is like a secondary thing to it. That's not why I'm at that wrestling match. And whereas before,
to be honest,
it's like,
some of this was like some of the reasons why the lines, like, we're not necessarily saying that like wrestling changed to the point where people were no longer allowed to be sexual at all in nature. It was just, of course, the objectification of uncomfortably putting women in positions where they had to take their clothes off for matches and stuff is gone. Which personally is a good, like, it was a good thing, not just because like they were able to hire people who would do it comfortably, but that wasn't really the point. It's that it was considered that to be a woman in the industry you had to do that, and that's what was the problem, and that's what a lot of people
who were legitimately good wrestlers had to put up with that shit, right? Like
yes, exactly. Like Trish Stratus,
a lot of the early
divas had to go through garbage, and you could clearly tell they weren't comfortable with doing it.
She wasn't there for that. She was there to wrestle, and she had to just deal with it.
I'll let you make your point here before I kind of wrap up the point I wanted to make with wrestling. But go ahead.
No, all I'm saying is that
like
the people
stream anyway. SharePlay is going to finish soon anyway, so we're kind of done an episode here.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just saying that like people who were willing to put up with things, with things that they liked but didn't necessarily come to a product for because it wasn't necessarily as easy to get access to those things, right? When I was 13 years old, it was much more difficult for me to come up to kind of explore like that side of myself because I didn't have a laptop, I didn't live alone. I had to be secretive about it, and it's like, oh well, if I can get this out of wrestling too, like perfect. I'm kind of scratching that itch. Whereas nowadays, it's like, fucking, I don't need that in my wrestling. If I want to watch porn, I'll just watch porn. I'm fucking, I'm engaged. She knows I'm gross.
Yeah, that's true. That argument is
if
fair.
I sit
like
down to watch wrestling, I want to watch
during
some good
the Attitude
wrestling.
Era, a lot of. I mean, at the time, there obviously were still women fans back then.
Yeah.
And tons of them, but they would tolerate, or I'm sure some girls were interested in the sexual nature of some of that stuff too.
Some
right?
who would still be
I
into that
imagine
now,
that's
sure.
the case. It's always a diverse answer. Generally, it's always going to be. But there was still a lot of teenage boys and men, and as you said, the internet was a different thing then. Like that's kind of the thing with dealing with the curve of evolution with a lot of this stuff is like the world changed. So that some people are not of the opinion. Some people are ignorant to the fact that as the world changes, it affects everything. And if you don't realize that, you're not like that. That's kind of what I'm talking about with the beach. As the world changes, these activities change, and I feel like the people who are ignorant of these changes are the type of people who just willfully get in line every year and complain about it without ever changing anything. Like, I feel like they're the people who are actually the problem, not the businesses, because we can't fault the businesses for just
they're still making
satisfying
money.
The consumer base that continues to line up. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, even though the world has changed and a lot of us are not happy with the experience that's being delivered, there's still so many that are, that it's just like... I can't fault you, business. You're still making money, and to me that was the WWE example I was getting at. Somehow, some way, the WWE has survived despite making a lot of decisions that would financially bankrupt a lot of businesses, simply because their consumer base is so exposed that it's just like they can get away with it.
Because if you say the word wrestling to an outsider, name one wrestling company. Everybody in the world can name the WWE.
Exactly. It's been monopolized, which a lot of people, look at as like that's a problem with capitalism. You could use Walmart too in place of them. Companies like that, they're essentially companies that don't play by the rules. Which, to me, they're companies that have broken capitalism. I like to say, because they have. They don't play by they play by a nuanced version of capitalist rules where the priority becomes satiating a market base that is their own, not satiating the larger market user base.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway,
we did a lot of
interesting conversation. I hope our listeners were interested.
Yeah, I think
that was a grind session. The plus is next time on Dragon Ball Z, we will definitely be fighting the Bloodstarved Beast again. We're loaded on stuff.
Perfect.
And we're ready to go.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thank you. I
also leveled up again.
Oh, what did you build up? I actually wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry.
Attack.
Attack. Perfect. Okay.
Yep. We're at 26 now for skill.
All right.
So
we will see you guys next time.
See ya.